Hey everyone, the Good Captain here. Welcome to my second video in my Axis and Allies anniversary series. This will be a video on the tech dice optional rule, but I wanted a quick point of housekeeping before we moved into that, and that's to say that in the description box below this video will be a link to the errata for this game, as well as a one-stop shop for all your optional rules. I put them all on one Word document, so both of those documents will be available for download in the link below. So tech dice in this game run very much or exactly like they do in global, but if you are unfamiliar, I'm going to very quickly run through how this works. So each of these tech tokens is what you buy to make breakthroughs or attempt to make breakthroughs on your turn, and they each cost 5 IPCs. Okay, to make a breakthrough, you need to roll a 6, and when you roll a 6, you get one breakthrough no matter how many tech dice or tech tokens you have, and then all the tokens are returned to the bank. So you can only make one breakthrough per turn maximum. The purchase of additional tech tokens is only an accelerant. It's only an accelerant to your first tech. That's it. So that's my very abbreviated review of how the tech dice and acquiring techs functions in this game. So now I'm going to transition to talking about what's wrong with this optional rule. And what's wrong with it, I've kind of drilled down and split it into two different points. One point is that I feel that it injects into the game an element of catastrophic randomness. That's what I'm calling it, catastrophic randomness. And I will demonstrate that here in a moment. And the other thing is that I think it inadvertently favors the Axis pretty clearly. So both of those points will sort of mesh, but here's how I've decided to try to explain myself. So the first thing I want to do is talk about a tactic. What's the best way to take advantage of tech dice? If you walk into a game where tech dice is part of the anniversary game you're playing, in my opinion, one of the more lethal strategies in its employment is to, whatever side you're on, buy a tech token, just a single tech token, at the beginning of each power's first turn in the first round of the game, okay? Just do that. It's only 5 IPCs. It will, on a long enough timeline, it won't get wasted, right? Because buying 2 tech tokens guarantees that the other 5 only acted as an accelerant. Buying 1 will guarantee you a tech. It's just when will it happen. But with 3 world powers in this game, there's a 50% chance that somebody will get a breakthrough. So theoretically, at the end of the second turn, at least one of your powers will have one. But that's not the point. The point is that each power has a tech token and could potentially make a breakthrough on any given turn. Okay, now hold that in your mind, because we're going to move to another concept. And that is just to note that there are 12 techs, okay? This is not breaking news or anything. There's 12 techs in global as well if you use it there. But there are 12, okay? So it's this combination of strategy and fact of the optional rules. The fact that there are 12 and the strategy of buying a single tech token can cause quite a bit of anxiety on the side of your opponents. And let me try to demonstrate this, okay? Okay, I've decided to go hands-free to show this example. Let's assume that the US player has 3 transports up here in C Zone 1, right? And this is a relatively safe place. It's pretty far away from Germany. And let's say that Germany has followed the strategy of buying a single tech token. And let's say this is the turn where they make the breakthrough. And let's say they roll on breakthrough chart 2 and they happen to get long-range aircraft, which is, in this particular case, extraordinarily lethal. And very suddenly so, because breakthroughs occur before you even make your purchases. So Germany would be able to take advantage of whatever breakthrough she got immediately, which in this case very likely means the immediate destruction of all 3 Allied or American transports. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Because now the bomber can move 8 spaces. Goodbye, US transports. Now you might be saying, well, I cherry-picked that tech. But understand that this can happen, right? there's a possibility that this could happen, right? So what are you to do as the US player before Germany takes their turn, knowing that they have one tech token? Should you ignore the threat of long-range aircraft completely? Should you provide an escort, right? Should you throw a destroyer up there just in case they make that breakthrough? Should you throw 2 destroyers up there because you see that Germany has a fighter in France, which could reach it at 3 out, 3 back? No, this is a little absurd, right? I mean, those destroyers were probably needed elsewhere. And if you think, again, that I'm cherry picking, I'm going to show you a few more examples. But this is what I'm trying to tie together here, this the concept that there are too many techs relative to how you acquired them. Okay, so you can cause an immeasurable amount of agony to your opponent if you buy a single token and just hold it over him like a potential sword of Damocles, that you might select a breakthrough on a certain breakthrough chart and immediately cause some sort of catastrophic damage to his side. And as you'll see in a moment, in my opinion, it does not break evenly between the Axis and the Allies. So the next point I wanted to make was that this optional rule, tech dice, favors the Axis. And to begin with that argument, I first want to point out a certain thing that is true about these 2 breakthrough columns. And that is that 8 of 12 of these are outright beneficial to units in an offensive nature. In other words, they improve the attack value or potency of the unit they describe. 3 of them are arguably economic only, although in my opinion, an improvement to your economy is an offense by another means. Only one of 12 technologies outright improves the defense or defensive capabilities of any units in this game, and that's radar from Breakthrough Chart 2. The rest improve the offensive potency. So that is a thing that is true, okay? That's just a fact. My argument here is that this is why the Axis are unfairly or favored by this optional rule. And that is that, here's a little bit of opinion mashed into this, although experience, I feel, has reinforced this, and that is that who's doing the offensive action in the early part of the game, right? The first 2, 3, 4, 5, arguably 6 turns, arguably the whole game, the Axis need to be on the warpath, right? So when all of the techs favor offensive action and the Axis players are poised to commit the most offensive action, it just theoretically seemed to me that it would disproportionately benefit the Axis. And I have a couple of examples, one of which actually happened in a game I played, to demonstrate. Okay, I went hands-free again for this example, and we're back to Germany again. It's not important to see all the units that would probably be on a board in this situation, but for those of you who've played Anniversary, this is the East Front, of course. We are going to assume there's some sort of defense in Russia, and much like the previous example with American boats in Sea Zone 1 being wiped out by German aircraft if they secure long-range aircraft, this is going to assume the Germans suddenly secure mechanized infantry. Mechanized infantry means that when armor units that are paired with infantry units move together, they can move 2 spaces. So of this stack of 6 infantry here, the Russian player will be hit with 4, or could ostensibly be hit by 4 tanks and 4 infantry they wouldn't otherwise have been expecting to be attacked by. So again, much like in the last example, although I wasn't trying to prove anything like this in the last example, it sort of supports it. The Axis again find themselves in a position not uncommon, right? These are not uncommon positions. To have German infantry and German armor in East Poland, not uncommon. To have Russia, to have the can opener done by Italy and Russia exposed, not uncommon. And what is Russia really to have to assume that they need to defend against, these technologies that favor offense so much? In my opinion, it's another point that just underlines the silliness of this optional rule. I've got one more for you that I think is even more devastating. Another example that I think supports this position is if the Japanese suddenly got jet fighters. And this one is particularly lethal, in my opinion. This is probably the most lethal technology that could be paired with any one power. Why? Because this is the at-start setup for Japanese air power. 9 fighters. The Japanese start out with 9 fighters, and in case you don't know what the jet power tech does, it turns each one of these little bees into a 4 attacker. So it turns each one of these little guys into a little short-range bomber. What defense can stand up against 9 of these? This isn't global. And even in global, we could argue that the Japanese Air Force is overpowered there. But this is not that game. And yet there are 9. And if the Japanese land jet power, I would, be hard pressed, I think, to defend against such an overwhelming amount of firepower concentrated. They could blow through any stout defense that you could possibly make. So again, this is okay, except for the fact that there's just not enough defensive technologies to counter with. I'm not going to go through each of these techs one by one. I had other little arguments to make for a couple of the other ones that I thought were interesting, but I've gone through 3. I've gone through long-range aircraft, mechanized infantry, jet power, and I struggle to find, and in my experience have struggled to find an equivalently lethal tech that applies to the Allies. So again, I'll just say that one more time. Of the examples, I've shown 3 in this video. Of those 3 examples that all seem to benefit the Axis in a very powerful way, I have struggled to find an equivalent situation for the Allies. And in my experience playing with tech, this has also been true. So this concludes my video. Just a quick recap. This was a video covering tech dice in Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition. I started out by making the argument that as an optional rule, it's flawed because it causes what I call catastrophic randomness. And I showed an example of that. Actually, they kind of blended together because the next argument I made was that it disproportionately favors the Axis, given that they are the offending powers in the beginning of the game, and that nearly all of the techs favor offensive actions. And I gave 2 examples specifically towards that end with regards to mechanized infantry in Moscow and jet power for the Japanese. Actually, one other thing I wanted to point out, 9 fighters, it's not that interesting unless you understand that no other power has close to 9. Germany has 4, Russia has 0, the UK has 3, the Italians have 1, and the US have 3 or 4, I've forgotten. But at any rate, nothing comes close to the Japanese Air Force at the beginning of the game, and if they land jet power, it's pretty incredible. So let me know what you think about tech dice in the description box below. Otherwise, thank you for watching this. All the best from the good captain, and bye-bye.